Ladies and gents, let's take a look at our raid boss, Mr. Gruul, returning in his former glory. He has many more abilities this time round. I assume that in TBC we fought a handicap version. I don't know why, but there we do. Obviously, it's designed to meet the current standard of raiding, which, despite popular belief, is significantly harder than it was in the past. We only managed to get a few pulls in. Let's have some caveats here. One, this is EU, which means we didn't get any character copies. We're scum of the earth EU people. We don't get such benefits. No, we don't. And also, beta is beta, and the initial raid testing is always buggy as hell in terms of getting people online. We only managed to get a few pulls in, and we had 30 people willing to play, but only a few that managed to actually get in. You can see that on the raid frames. This takes place in the Blackrock Foundry. Everybody here is PvP geared, and we are scaled appropriately to what's happening. Also, this is the first iteration of the boss. Bugs are bugs. Several of the abilities do things incorrectly, which is a bit of a bummer. I also showed you some Highmall raid at the end of this. We didn't get to test that, unfortunately. We didn't get enough people online to actually pull it. A little bit sad, but I did get to have a little wander around an empty instance. Very nice. It has a little bit of a TOC feel to it in terms of size, but that's okay. Blackrock Foundry is nothing surprising. It's exactly what we'd expect from something inside the old mountain of Blackrock. So the aesthetic is nice and detailed, but it is familiar. It is familiar. There's definitely a familiarity there. So something to bear in mind every single time. Also, DPS is not balanced. Okay, they decided to do the raid testing before DPS was balanced. So, yeah, some classes seem weak. Don't picnic. Keep your picnics in the basket. All right, guys? Keep your picnic there because that's just the way it goes. Let's have a look at this guy. What does he do? What did we have going on? He increases his damage as his health goes down, which is pretty cool. Instead of having grow, as we saw in TBC, this time as soon as you take 10% of his health, his damage increases at appropriate margin. So that's always interesting to see. He has an energy bar this time round. So this fight was a bit of a combination of things like Brutalis, if any of you remember that. Every 100 energy, he casts Inferno Strike, which slices a huge group of people and has to spread that damage out. Hits the tank for a lot of damage and then spreads damage out amongst the pack. So what you'll see noticeably is this is supposed to be a 2-tank fight. We only managed to get 1 tank online. I could only get my mage online. I couldn't help with the tanking, which was a little bit sad. But still, you'll see the tank turning the boss towards us and then cleaving that part of the group and then moving back as he does do damage and overhand smashes, which will hit other people, right? So the tank will then move the boss away from facing that group. We formed 2 groups, and this seemed to be fine. We actually got the boss to 60% without trouble. This was with only 1 tank and ignoring certain mechanics, and therefore we're pretty certain we were able to kill this. Remember, this is the new heroic mode, which means it's somewhere between current, normal, and heroic, okay? It's slightly easier than what current Mr. Pandaria heroic is, but slightly harder than current normal. Crumbling Roar. This is something we did see in the past, but this time they decided to display it with a rather odd graphic. I would like this graphic to change because it just looks like a crappy earthquake from an elemental shaman. And it's really easy, in fact. It has reminiscence of Ragnaros in the Firelands, where it spawned like a little bit of a like straight line of areas that were dangerous. They were fire on Ragnaros. And then that's where that will start. So all you do, it's a very easy mechanic to avoid. In fact, it almost seems kind of pointless, is wherever the first circle appears, you don't stand there. And then when the rocks fall there, you move into there, and everywhere else is dangerous. It seems almost a trivial mechanic. I've got to be honest, I'm not sure what the purpose of this thing is. But still, it's a mechanic that goes on in the fight. I have to say, I was kind of just like, why do this? The fight should be about his intense damage increase. Gruul classically was almost elegantly brutal in the fact that the fight itself was particularly simple with one particularly difficult mechanic. The rest of it was trying to defeat him before he defeated you because he was growing in strength and power. So I'm not completely convinced that Crumbling Roar is actually an exciting mechanic. World Shaking. You will be glad to know that Shatter still exists. Yeah, Shatter still exists. He petrifies you. I'm sure you guys have done this for Transmog, but you probably never got to the petrify phase where he will slow you down to a crawl and then you freeze. And after that, you shatter and you explode everybody around you. This was classically the most difficult part of the fight, as in TBC, this thing could one-shot you if you were reasonably close to another person, and it was generally the cause of most wipes, is as soon as Shatter went off, everybody died. That was it. You had to be a really good distance away. It currently is 8 yards, which is kind of friendly, let's be honest. How this will work out in 30-man, remember this is entirely flexible, I couldn't say. I couldn't say how this is going to pan out. In fact, towards the end of testing, he seemed to stop doing it entirely. I only went through one petrify phase, and then he just didn't bother. Then he just didn't bother doing it whatsoever, and therefore I couldn't test it a lot. But 8 yards is not difficult to avoid if you're with about 15 or 20 people. If you do get more than that, then that could be a bit of a big deal. How did people perform here? What were some of the noticeable things? I think it's worth mentioning some feedback, as DPS wasn't balanced. In our group, it wasn't too bad, as we were all PvP geared. There was no abuse that went on the US side, which were things like Tarot Ghost's Rest. The legendary stuff and the cloaks were all causing significant problems, as were the 4-piece PvP set bonuses. They were causing crazy problems. Healers are in a really bad place. I think this is where we should start it, really. Healers are just all over the place, and hopefully we're going to see fixes to that, with Resto Shaman and Mistweavers being particularly bad, and Resto Druids and Holy Paladins being extremely powerful. Almost to the point of embarrassment. The difference healing-wise was absolutely crazy. Damage-wise, it wasn't too bad. It wasn't too bad. There are certainly some specs out there that are broken, like Arms Warriors are doing significant damage, where Fury seems to do nothing. Frost Mage is reasonably good, whereas Fire and also Arcane seems to do nothing. So these are all things that need to be worked on. But for a first raid boss, yeah, he's okay. This is the first boss you've got to encounter in the Blackrock Foundry. I kind of think he's okay. He seems relatively simple. We were almost guaranteed to kill it in the next couple of goes, even with the few people we brought, which was also imbalanced. We had more healers than DPS, I think. So, yeah, cool fight, cool fight. It's nice to see Gruul return in some form. He was always an interesting fight. Hopefully, this is just a warm-up. Just a warm-up to what's going on later. It's a very borrowed fight. All these mechanics I've seen before in a very much more difficult version. These are actually a far simpler version of mechanics we've seen before, and no doubt mechanics many of you have seen before as well. So overall, yeah, about a 6 out of 10 I'd give this boss. It was nice, it was okay, but it was Gruul. It was Gruul with a couple of added twists. We've done it before, and you guys know how I feel about reused content, so there's always that to bear in mind. Alright guys, there's Gruul for you. Enjoy. Bye.